I'm Kim.
And I'm Bree.
And we're the TBI Rockstars. And today, we're going to talk about what you say when you're meeting somebody new and they're like, oh, hey, so what do you do?
What do you do for work? What line of work are you in? We hear it all.
Yeah.
And then you have that moment where you're kind of like,
like, especially because, you're already impaired because of the brain injury, right? So, I've, stared at people and, usually I, kind of look around desperately for something to say. It gets kind of awkward. So
if you could just whisper, could someone tell me the answer here?
I know, that would help. And so, it's a balance of being truthful and not too truthful.
Definitely.
So Bree, what do you do for work?
No, what I would love to say when someone asks me that is I sit at home and I watch way more TV than I used to now that I can look at screens again. Would that be a good answer? Can I identify as a screen user? Is that a valid thing?
Might put you in a little bit awkward situation.
What about my job is going to doctor's appointments all the time?
All the time.
And then
hours a week.
Being exhausted for days afterwards. Is that a valid occupation? Do they have salary info on that?
I don't think it pays very well.
It definitely does not pay very well.
Or how about, yay me, I went to the library today. How would I tell that to a stranger? Today I went to a library and I'm really proud of myself.
I'm a professional dog petter.
Ooh, yeah, I could be a cat petter. Yeah.
Right, my dogs keep me company when I'm resting. That's all I do. I'm just here, I love you.
Yeah, or, I go to the library once a week and play mahjong with women 60 years or older.
Valid career option. Valid.
Yeah. Anyway.
All right, that's a wrap. The video's done.
We gave you some answers. That was great. So, what I think of, what I've come up with, I wrote a blog about this, but to reiterate kind of what I thought was a good way to answer that is first, I like to reflect on what I used to be, what my profession used to be. I like to say I got some sort of medical situation, however I want to say that. And then I try to throw some sort of bone to, so the person can, because really what the person wants is to relate with me as a human being, or put me in a category or have something to talk about.
They want a little more info about what your personality's like or whatever.
Or maybe
Are you
find
competent?
something.
Have you ever been employed?
No. Yeah. So, I don't know. So what do you say? How do you handle it?
I had a career before I was brain injured, so I often just say my career is in XYZ.
Oh.
And that doesn't give it a present tense. I'm not lying. But for people that I don't know very well, that's often enough information for them to feel oh, I can categorize you now.
Yes. Yes.
So I'll do that one, or I will also say something this is the industry that I work in, and then some of my interests are blah, blah, blah. Even if they didn't ask me what my hobbies are or whatever, I'll just kind of segue into that because, again, they are just looking for a little more information about you, and then that gives them you're more likely to have a conversation where they have something to talk about. I find that if I just say oh, my career is in XYZ, then what do they want to talk about more? My career.
It's true.
So sometimes I can
redirect.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah. What do you do?
Well, I basically use a spiel I worked out on in my blog. So I'm I'm not saying this is the most successful thing I do, but it's some version of hi, I'm Kim. I'm an environmental scientist. I worked as an environmental scientist for 15 years. Right now I'm taking a break because of some medical issues. But I'm spending some time doing, the best I can come up with is writing, because that's about the only valid adult pastime I can think of that I actually do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Make videos. I make videos.
We make videos. It's great. Totally valued. That also pays very well.
Excellent.
I think some other phrases that you can use are, I think medical issues is a good one. And I think just saying health issues or taking a sabbatical can apply.
Ooh, that's a
for
good
people.
word. That sounds fancy.
That can cover a lot and make you sound really like you have your act together.
Yeah, I like that. One thing I find awkward if I just say like I'm an environmental scientist, because I still identify as an environmental scientist, is as we get further in the conversation, they end up asking like, where do you work, or like,
Right.
what are you doing now? And then I feel like I'm lying if I'm like, oh, I do, and talk about my job for the past 9 years.
Yeah.
So what sort of hobbies do you throw out there?
I talk about the fact that I am involved with horses, that I do stuff with horses, and people are always interested in that. Or I'll mention that I have a poodle, because so many people have dogs that they'll be like way more excited to talk about their dog than their job. They just aren't always given that option in adult conversations.
I feel a little weird if I'd say, oh, I have cats.
Yeah.
Mutt cats from the shelter with behavior issues.
I think you could put a little spin on it and say something like, my career is being an environmental scientist, but what I really love is animal rescuing, or whatever. Even if you just like adopt like one cat from a shelter, like animal rescuing.
That's perfect.
Great,
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, this is why you got a lot more words than I do. I like go right to like the blunt truth, and how truthful is the truth really?
I have a side question.
Okay.
What is like the worst encounter you've had this way, where you like really screwed up your answer? It was super socially awkward.
I can't remember. That's kind of the one positive of the brain injury. I don't really remember. I just remember being at this opening for my lady, and talking to someone she had worked with in the past, and he asked me what I did, and I flailed around for a long time, like really looked around, like it got really awkward. And then I just ended up saying I was an environmental scientist, but then I ended up mentioning that I worked for the military department, and he like shut off because he's kind of a hippie guy, and the military is evil. So that sucked, because I already flailed around and felt really awkward, and then my truthful-ish answer wasn't the most socially gentle or like comfortable one.
And that can end up feeling like too vulnerable for you too, right? Like it can feel awkward for other people, and it can feel too vulnerable.
Right, yeah,
you.
it's just, I don't have any fight in me these days.
I think there was one day when I was just really tired and brain injured, and then I just cry, right? Like,
did you cry?
So someone like asked me, and I was like really upset that day about not having my career anymore, so I just sort of was like, I'm in software!
Wow.
So that was very professional.
Yeah, I might have teared up a few times. I usually don't remember, so
that's what a blessing. What a silver lining right there. But just so people know, like other people with brain injuries, like we're all having those moments. That's very human. Like there is some social awkwardness, I think, around being disabled, or having a brain injury, or not being gainfully employed. Our society's just not evolved to the point necessarily
where you can just like casually mention stuff.
Being graceful about that, yeah.
Although I say one thing that Mary prompts me on, and you should ask your significant other or caregiver to prompt you on anytime you're going to a social event, as you're driving there, if you're able to speak while in a car. She's like, okay, so what are you going to tell people when they ask you what you do for a living? And even though I've like been in this situation like 100 times, I forget every time what I say, and I flail around. So it's good right before the event to like go through my spiel and like practice it and get it out of my mouth, especially because I'm not a casual talker. I'm not a naturally articulate individual. So I would recommend that, having like practicing beforehand.
I agree. I think that's a good idea.
Even if you've done it a million times before, really helpful to practice beforehand.
It is.
It is.
And the last thing I want to mention is that I think it can be really tough to conserve your energy, and really important to be focused on healing. But at some point in your recovery, it might become wise to have a volunteering opportunity, or to start your own business, like just pay a couple $100s to form an LLC, something like that, or even just doing business as, which I'm not sure that requires any money. I think you can just create
you can just
one.
do it. Yeah.
Because at least that gives you something to put on your resume once you're down the line and maybe looking for part-time work or looking at going back to a job that's maybe a little less demanding than what you had. But to just like have something that you can put down is good. Even if it's
Instead of
like
a giant blank space.
even if it's like Kim's leatherworking business or right, like it doesn't have to be anything.
One of your
fancy.
hobbies.
And you know, it's
Beekeepers
kind of
Anonymous.
nice. Beekeepers Anonymous. I like it. That can be kind of handy for taxes too, to be honest, right? Like office space deductions and things like that. So
That's something to keep in mind. Definitely.
yeah. And I had a point in time during my recovery about 2 years in that I was volunteering and I wasn't getting paid for it. But part of my arrangement with the company was that I would work for free, but I got to say I was working there. Like we ironed that out
good.
ahead of time.
That's
So,
smart. Good preparation. So, hopefully this conversation has been helpful for you to figure out what you're going to say when someone asks you what you do for a living, because it's going to happen.